Welcome back to First Look, the show where we give you a sneak peek at an upcoming game that you probably haven't heard of. Now, truth be told, you may have heard about this one. It is Wreckland Run from Renegade Game Studios and Scott Almes, but you haven't seen it like we're going to show it to you today.
Yeah, we got some initial look here. This is going to be part of the Solo Hero series. If you remember, there's Proving Grounds, and then there's Warp's Edge, and now we are here with this Wreckland Run thing. It's kind of a post-apocalyptic type theme. You may just notice from the artworks and things that are similar. But in this game, you are on the run, man. I mean, basically, you're running.
Yeah, you are. There's two phases to this game. We are going to talk about the run, but think of it like this. Think of it kind of like a tower defense game.
Yeah.
Where the tower is careening down a wasteland highway, chased by all sorts of crazy people and vehicles. That's what you've got going on here. But there's a lot of strategy involved here. Each round, and there's 3 rounds in each scenario that you play. We're going to talk a little bit about the campaign, by the way, but we're going to save that to the end. But in each scenario, you're going to go 3 rounds, and every round has a wreckage phase.
Yep. And a run phase.
And a run phase. The wreckage phase, both work sort of similarly. You're going to see these dice here, but this is not a dice chucking game.
Yeah.
I'm going to chuck them once. And then in the wreckage phase, you're going to use these dice to add parts to your vehicle. You're going to add upgrades to your vehicle. And by the way, did I mention, you have your choice of different vehicles. Now, these are all going to start with some parts on them, but these parts are going to be things that you're going to use during the run to sort of battle off a lot of these cars here. But in the wreckage phase, as you use these dice, you're going to eventually whittle down to no dice, which is when you go on to the wreckage phase. Now, you've noticed here maybe that there's some white dice and some red dice. Those have different impact depending on which phase of the game you're in. In the wreckage phase, the white dice are nice and safe.
Yes, they work.
You're going to use them to acquire whatever you want, no problem. The red dice, they're always there if you want to use them. But when you do use them, they work just like the white dice. However, when you use one, you have to roll it up and then look at a chart on this scenario to see if there are any negative repercussions because they're just a little bit unstable. Yeah. But once you're done doing that, you're going to move on to the run phase. And one of the things you're going to collect in the run phase is scrap, which I didn't cover in the wreckage phase. Yeah. But we're going to talk about scrap in a second.
Yeah, so now you got your car all kitted. Those cars that you buy over there are put on these slots over here, and you have those slots over there. But now these dice are used differently. So you start with one of the red dice, and you put on one of these things that matches up, and all the cards that are matching that same number around will activate and start shooting at your parts. And what you see here is damage is going to go on your parts, and some of your parts will have shields to kind of help with that, but that's where the damage begins. And now it's your turn to use the white dice, 1 to 3 of them, and start activating with the numbers that match. And you have ways of mitigating by putting these things in the middle here so you can move things around, but generally you're going to be activating and shooting back at them. Or you even can ram the cars on the sides, like I'm about to ram David like this, and then you can cause damage to them, so you put in damage on them, and eventually if you get there, you knock them out. And there's little rules in here where if you get it perfectly right, this becomes part of this over here. There are bosses that will appear once you get to a certain part, and they have their own abilities that's shaking things up. And there's other things that can happen where these cards shift around. There's plenty of strategies that happen in here. Really, really interesting stuff.
Yeah, the theme of this is wild and as crazy and as chaotic as it is. The crunchy strategy involved in what you're doing here is pretty significant. I don't have the solo experience that you do, but I was allured to this by the artwork alone, but then when I got to play it, it is truly a puzzle that you're trying to balance everything. You're not just randomly like shooting these guys around you. They're moving around you. You have a lot of ability to sort of manipulate them. When you ram them, you're able to move them into adjacent spaces. So you're going to want to move them around so that you can like gather some of them up and then do a bunch of damage to them with a big ram or maybe a weapon that you've outfitted yourself that targets all of them, things like that.
And the cards give you types of damage. So the cards you're buying over here can be cards that repair certain parts. There's cards that will be, when you get them damaged, they're going to be spots that you need to repair. So you got that issue as well. And there's even a mechanic where if you have the number that matches, there'll be 2 things that you can activate on the cards. So the cards are a very interesting part of here. They're not something to take lightly in this game. Now, during that, and to speak to that, there is more content. There are
Oh, yeah.
there are cards that you're going to be able to add it through the campaign. So just tell us a little about the campaign stuff.
Yeah, so the campaign, like I said, this is the scenario against Big Fossil. This is chapter 1 of a campaign that, at least in the box we have, has 7 chapters. Once you've successfully gotten past Big Fossil,
Hopefully.
which is a task,
Hopefully.
just so you know,
Hopefully.
you can open up chapter 2. And in chapter 2, we don't want to spoil too much, so we're not going to really show you or talk to you specifically about what's in store. But the kinds of things that are in store for you are new upgrades that you can add to your upgrade row that you could potentially add to your car in that chapter. Potentially new parts, definitely some new enemies, and definitely a new boss. So there's going to be a boss in that chapter. And then when you flip through this sort of spiral-bound book, there's a whole storyline that you can follow through where it introduces that character, the boss, maybe some of their new minions. And the cool thing about how the campaign works is whenever you open a chapter and succeed it, a lot of those cards are going to kind of continue with you. So those new enemies are going to always be in the enemy deck from that point forward, unless, of course, the chapter says otherwise. Some of these chapters, again, maybe a little spoiler alert here, are going to include completely new mechanics.
Yes.
So there may be a little deck of cards that's maybe like an event deck that triggers a certain point during the phases of the game that weren't involved in chapter 1.
Now, of course, I'm not going to go full in on my opinion. This is not a review, but I would just say that the Solo series has done a good job of creating, this Solo Hero series has done a good job of creating like a story in each one of these. Proving Grounds, you had different scenarios as well. In Warp Speed, you could build a character and ship and things like that. And then you have this one here. Now this one has a full-on story as well, but this one goes deep into multiple chapters and stuff like this. So I'm glad to see that they continue to build worlds inside this box, so you get a little bit more for your bang for your buck, it seems.
Yeah, for sure. The campaign is certainly robust, and I wouldn't even say we scratched the surface of the game and the mechanics here.
Some thick envelopes in here, by the way.
There are
some skinny ones, some thick ones.
If you're interested in learning more about how the game plays, if it's not up on the channel already, Jeremy is going to have a full playthrough of, I'm guessing, maybe the first scenario.
Yeah,
just to
probably
keep
the
it
first
spoiler-free. It introduces you to all the basic concepts of what you do, but you'll learn a little bit more about the dice placement that we were talking about, the scrap that we were talking about, which is when you perfectly destroy a card, you can use that scrap as dice in the future rounds, things like that, as well as just some of the nuances about how the parts work, how you acquire those parts, and then some of how these sort of like boss charts work when you can't allocate a die. So there's a fair amount going on in this game, for sure. So if you have any questions, please make them in the comments below. We'll answer what we can without spoiling anything.
We'll try.
And be sure to check out their campaign. I'm sure they're going to have a lot of information there. And like I said, check out the live play of Jeremy's solo playthrough.
He won't be here.
I won't be there.
This is weird. This is a
I'm
solo
horning
game.
in on the solo expert here. But like I said, ask any questions you want. But until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.
Take care, party people.
Congratulations, you got to the end of one of our videos. Now, if you want more practice, just click on the video over here. It's another video. You might not have seen it yet, so click on it. If you don't want to do that, at least click on the subscription button below. That always helps us. And if you want notifications, please ring that bell.